At 73 years old, Claire Hartwell believed grief was the heaviest thing a person could carry. She was wrong, because when the lid of that safe deposit box finally lifted, the one her husband had kept secret for 50 years, she didn't feel shock. She didn't feel anger. She felt the sudden, unmistakable realization that her husband hadn't been hiding something from her. He had been hiding her from something. For half a century, Claire's marriage had been quiet in the best way possible. No scandals, no mysterious disappearances, no unexplained money appearing in accounts. Robert Hartwell was steady, predictable, the kind of man who paid bills 2 weeks early and folded receipts into perfect squares before filing them alphabetically. He kissed her forehead every morning. He never missed their anniversary. He taught their daughter to ride a bike in the driveway of their first house. Normal. Beautifully, boringly normal. But there was one small oddity. Anything involving banks, legal documents, or official paperwork, Robert handled it. Alone. Always alone. When Claire suggested opening a joint safe deposit box for her grandmother's jewelry, Robert smiled that gentle smile of his and said, "I've got it covered, sweetheart. One less thing for you to worry about." And because love is built on trust, she never questioned it. Not once in 50 years. Then Robert passed away on a Tuesday morning in April, 3 months before their golden anniversary. The funeral was simple. The grief was enormous. And 3 days later, the bank called. "Mrs. Hartwell, this is Sandra from First National Bank. I'm calling regarding a safe deposit box registered under your late husband's name." Claire frowned, phone pressed against her ear. "I'm sorry, there must be some mistake. We don't have a..." "Box number 447, Sandra interrupted gently. "It's been active since May 1974, paid annually, never missed a payment." 1974, the year before Claire met Robert, before their first date at that Italian restaurant on Maple Street, before the proposal on Christmas Eve, before everything she thought defined her life began. I didn't know about any box," Claire said slowly. There was a pause on the other end, the kind of pause that carries weight. "Mrs. Hartwell, you're listed as the secondary holder. According to our records, in the event of your husband's passing, you have full access. We just need you to come in with identification." Claire's hand trembled slightly as she wrote down the appointment time. What had Robert been keeping in a box for 50 years? What could possibly require that kind of secrecy? She was about to find out, but here's where it gets strange. The bank smelled like old carpet and air conditioning, a smell Claire had encountered 1,000 times but never really noticed until now. The key they'd found in Robert's desk drawer was old, so worn the brass had turned almost silver in spots. It barely reflected the fluorescent lights overhead. Sandra, the bank manager, led Claire down a hallway she'd never seen before, past the teller windows, past the loan offices, through a heavy door that required a code. The vault room was smaller than Claire expected, cold, lined with numbered metal boxes from floor to ceiling. Box 447 was at eye level. Sandra inserted the bank's key first, then she stepped back, giving Claire's release. "Take your time," she said softly, as if she knew this moment required privacy. Claire's hand shook as she inserted Robert's worn key. The lock clicked. For a moment, she didn't pull it open, couldn't pull it open. Because once she did, something would change, some truth would emerge from 5 decades of silence, and there's no unlearning what you discover. She pulled. The box slid out with a whisper of metal on metal. Inside were photographs, but not the kind she expected. No romantic photos, no love letters, no evidence of a secret family or hidden affair. Just buildings, street corners, parking lots, storefronts, all in faded color from decades ago. Some photos showed crowds with faces partially turned away, as if the photographer had been trying to capture someone without being noticed. There was a thin manila folder marked only with a number, 73K4419. No name, no title, just numbers. And a small velvet pouch, worn at the edges. Claire picked it up. It was light, almost empty. She opened it. Nothing inside. For a brief moment, Claire felt something like disappointment. All this secrecy for what? Old photographs in an empty pouch? Then she noticed what had been carefully tucked beneath the folder. An envelope. Yellowed with age, sealed with wax that had cracked over time. Her name was written on the front in handwriting that wasn't Robert's. Claire Hartwell. No, wait. Claire Brennan. Her maiden name. A name she hadn't used since 1975. Her hands trembled as she broke the wax seal. Inside was a letter dated March 1974. The paper was thin, delicate. The ink had faded to brown. But the urgency in the handwriting was still visible. Words pressed hard into the page, some letters bleeding where the pen had paused too long. Robert, this cannot continue. You know the risks, you know it's at stake. She can't know. If she asks questions, if she starts looking, they'll find her. And if they find her, everything we worked for disappears. The deadline was February 28th. We're past it now. The exposure window is closing, but it's not closed. Keep her close, keep her quiet, keep her safe. You're the only protection she has. No signature. Claire read it 3 times, her mind racing through possibilities, each one worse than the last. A second life, another woman, a child she never knew about. Robert had seemed so steady, so reliable. But what if that was the disguise? What if the careful, organized man she'd married had been carefully, deliberately hiding another existence? The letter mentioned protection, mentioned her, but in what context? What deadline had passed? What exposure? Claire's chest tightened. Then her eyes caught on something at the bottom of the letter. 2 words, barely legible, written smaller than the rest. Protective custody, followed by a case number. This wasn't a confession. This was a warning. But warning her about what? Beneath the letter was a notarized document. The official kind, heavy paper, embossed seal, date stamped from 1973. Claire's hands moved faster now, flipping through pages. Her maiden name appeared on the first page, but it was spelled wrong. Claire Brennan, not Brennan. She almost dismissed it as a clerical error, until she saw the second page. Her childhood address, the apartment in Queens where she'd lived with her parents until she was 19. Then another address, the first place she'd rented on her own, a studio in Brooklyn she'd lived in for exactly 7 months. Then another, and another. Every place Claire had lived before meeting Robert was listed in chronological order. Addresses she hadn't thought about in 40 years. Places she'd barely remembered existed. But Robert had remembered. Or someone had. She turned to the next page and found something that made her blood run cold. A timeline. Not of Robert's life. Of hers. March 1971. Employed at Morrison & Locke law firm, receptionist. June 1971. Transferred to filing department. October 1971. Resigned. Reason? Personal. November 1971. Moved to new address. Unlisted. December 1971, January 1974. Subject relocated 4 times. February 1974. Threat level? Elevated. The words blurred. Subject. Not Claire. Not she.
This wasn't a document about something Robert had done. This was a file about her. Someone had been tracking her movements, her jobs, her entire life, before she even knew Robert existed. Claire's breathing quickened. She pulled out more papers, no longer careful, no longer methodical. A newspaper clipping fluttered out from between documents. The paper was brittle, the fold lines nearly torn through. Federal investigation expands. 3 more arrests and ongoing case. The article was from October 1971. The headline was followed by paragraphs with entire sections blacked out. Official redactions, done with thick marker. But one detail remained visible. A location. Morrison & Locke Law Firm, Manhattan. The same firm where Claire had worked. The same firm where she'd filed papers and answered phones and brought coffee to lawyers whose names she couldn't even remember anymore. Claire's mind raced backward through time. She'd been 21 years old, newly graduated from a community college secretarial program. The job had seemed boring but stable. She remembered the attorneys in their expensive suits, the closed-door meetings, the occasional federal agent who'd show up asking questions. But she'd been a receptionist. She filed papers. She had no access to anything important, right? Unless she'd seen something she wasn't supposed to see. Unless she'd filed something she wasn't supposed to file. Unless in the mundane routine of her boring receptionist job, she'd witnessed something that made her dangerous, and someone had been searching for her ever since. Claire felt dizzy. Had marrying Robert put him in danger? Had her past, whatever it contained, followed her into their quiet, normal life? Is that why he'd always handled the paperwork alone? To keep her name out of systems, off records, hidden from whoever might still be looking. The thought formed slowly, terribly. Maybe Robert had spent 50 years protecting her from a threat that never went away. Then she found the final envelope,
and everything changed again. This envelope was different, newer. The paper was white, not yellowed. The seal was clean, and it was addressed in handwriting she recognized immediately, Robert's careful, precise script. To Claire, open only after I'm gone. Her vision blurred with tears as she broke the seal. Inside were 3 handwritten pages, dated just 14 months ago. My dearest Claire, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you found the box. I've rehearsed this letter in my mind 1,000 times, trying to find the right words. The truth is, there are no right words for what I need to tell you. I'm sorry. Not for what I did. I'd do it all again. But I'm sorry you had to live your entire life not knowing how close you came to losing everything. Claire's hands trembled as she continued reading. In September 1971, you witnessed something at Morrison and Locke. You didn't know it then, you don't know it now. But you filed a document, a memo, I think, that connected 2 people who were supposed to stay unconnected. A federal prosecutor saw that connection, used it to build a case that brought down one of the largest organized crime operations in New York history. You saved that document. You logged it. You created the paper trail that made the prosecution possible. And someone noticed. Not the investigators, not the good guys. The people who lost everything when those arrests happened. The people who went to prison. The people whose operations crumbled. They noticed. Claire's breath caught. Robert's letter continued. I found out by accident. I was working as a legal clerk in 1973. Different firm, different world. But I heard rumors, whispers about a receptionist who'd been a witness. Someone they were trying to locate. Someone who'd vanished. I heard your maiden name in a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. Brennan. Claire Brennan. And when I met you 6 months later, purely by chance, purely by fate, I didn't realize at first you were the same person. But then you mentioned where you'd worked, mentioned moving around a lot, mentioned never quite feeling settled. And I knew someone was still looking. So I made a choice, Claire. I could tell you, watch you live the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, watch you become someone different, someone afraid, someone hiding. Or I could protect you in silence. I chose silence. I married you because I loved you, but I also married you because marriage gave me legal authority to shield you in ways you couldn't shield yourself. I changed your name through marriage. Claire Brennan became Claire Hartwell, a different identity in databases, a break in the paper trail. I handled all our paperwork, filed our taxes, managed accounts, kept your name out of systems that could be searched. I created noise in the records, false addresses, clerical errors that would confuse anyone tracking you. I watched, I listened, and every time I heard whispers, every time the old case resurfaced in legal circles, I made sure you stayed invisible. The safe deposit box was my insurance, my archive, evidence that I hadn't imagined the threat, proof that I'd done what needed to be done, photos of people I'd seen watching our street, documents I'd obtained through old legal connections, records of every time I'd had to redirect, confuse, or erase your presence from searchable systems. You lived freely, Claire, because you didn't know you were being hunted, and ignorance, painful as it is to admit, was your greatest protection. Claire's tears fell onto the paper, smudging the ink. I know this will hurt. I know you'll feel betrayed. You'll wonder if our entire marriage was built on deception. But I need you to understand something. Every morning when I kissed your forehead, that was real. Every anniversary we celebrated, every moment we shared, all of it was real. The only thing I kept from you was the danger. And I kept it from you because I loved you too much to let fear steal your life the way it would have stolen mine if our roles were reversed. The threat is gone now, Claire. The last person from that original organization died 3 years ago. I've been monitoring it, waiting, making sure. This letter, this box, they're your proof, your closure. You were never paranoid for feeling watched in those early years. You were right, but you were also protected. Every single day for 50 years. The letter ended with one final line. You were always worth protecting, even from the truth. Forever yours, Robert. Claire sat in that cold vault room for 20 minutes, the letter pressed against her chest. Then she remembered the velvet pouch, the empty one. She picked it up again, felt along the lining. Her fingers found something, a small, hard bump in the seam. She tore the stitching carefully. Inside was a key, smaller than the safe deposit box key, gold, not brass. And attached to it was a tiny paper tag with an address in Robert's handwriting. Their first house, the one they'd sold 30 years ago. Claire's pulse quickened.
3 days later, she stood in the backyard of that house, the one now owned by a young couple with 2 children. She'd explained vaguely that her late husband had buried a time capsule here decades ago. The couple, charmed by the romance of it, let her dig. The metal box was exactly where the measurements indicated, 2 feet from the oak tree, 18 inches down. Inside was a single photograph. Robert, young and smiling, standing next to Claire on their wedding day, and tucked behind it a handwritten note. Just in case you ever doubted, this was always real. Claire Hartwell closed the safe deposit box for the last time. The same hands that had trembled with confusion now steadied with understanding. For 50 years, she'd believed she'd been protected by love. Now she understood the truth. She had been protected by sacrifice. And the greatest act of devotion her husband ever performed was ensuring she never knew how close she'd come to losing everything. Some secrets aren't kept to hurt. Some secrets are kept because telling them would hurt more. Robert Hartwell spent half a century standing between danger and the woman he loved. And Claire spent half a century living freely because of a silence she never knew existed. The box wasn't evidence of betrayal. It was proof of vigilance. A quiet archive of a love so deep it chose her safety over her trust. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's the truest form of love there is.